So let's talk about stages. No matter what the activity, you can't go straight from having no skill at all to twirling out complex loops and spins like you're in the finals of some Grand Prix tournament. You need to go from one level to the next, getting your routine down at each point before moving on. And a mental activity like language is the same. As babies, we build up our skills one word at a time. But even then, we know more than we let out of our mouths. I'm Moti Lieberman, and this is the LingSpace.
Herzlich willkommen zum
Welcome to the LingSpace.
Think about how babies sound when they talk. Let's say like a 1-year-old. They don't just bust out with sentences like, "I named my poodle after Victor," and if they did, we'd probably be pretty freaked out. Right when humans start talking, we only put out one word at a time, which is why our first stage of syntactic production is often known as the one-word stage. Any big sentence we'd want to express just gets squeezed down to that single solitary word. Since it's our whole phrase crunched down, it's also known as the holophrastic stage. Because kids at this point only get out one word at a time, it can be hard to figure out exactly what they mean. But there's still a lot we can figure out. Like, if they offer a ball to their mother and say mama, that's a recipient in terms of its role in the sentence. Or if they say daddy as their dad walks towards them, that's the naming of the actor or agent. And you can find kids at this stage saying a lot of different kinds of things too. Locations like box for returning something to a box, expressions of volition like no or again, and lots more. What's common across what kids say during the one-word stage is that they pick out the new information in a scenario. They want to talk about things that are changing, or that are new or unclear. That's the priority for their communication. And so they spot the word from a sentence that they care about most and say that thing. Now, we've said before that the capacity for syntax, or how our words are structured together, is something that humans are born with. But did these kids have syntax? It can be hard to tell just from only getting one word at a time. But maybe we can get some evidence from experiments looking at how they interpret sentences. For example, let's say you show kids around 16 to 18 months old 2 videos about a brother and sister, Mickey and Sarah. In one video, Mickey is pushing Sarah, and in the other, Sarah is pushing Mickey. Then a voice says, "Look, Sarah is pushing Mickey. Find Sarah pushing Mickey." Experiments show that children find the video that matches the sentence more quickly and look at it for longer than the non-matching video. And that shows they must have some sense of syntax, even at the one-word stage. After all, Mickey pushing Sarah and Sarah pushing Mickey are both realistic scenarios, so the only thing that could help pick out the right video is knowing how English works. Of course, little kids aren't just content with expressing themselves via one-word proclamations. That would be pretty limiting. So next up is the two-word stage, starting around 18 to 20 months old. Shockingly, at this stage, kids put together 2 words at a time, like nouns, verbs, or adjectives. So those are phrases like skate pretty, or see boy, or doggy bath. And over the course of the next few months of their little lives, they come to produce thousands of these different combinations. But how much can we tell about what kinds of syntax kids have just from these words? After all, the same combination can get used for a lot of different meanings. Doggy bath could mean that the dog is in the bath, or that the kid wants to give the dog a bath, or that the dog has his own bath that he uses. You could come up with a lot of things. Getting at the syntax from there can be really challenging. Over the years, there have been a number of different proposals for what's going on at this stage, but we're going to just talk about the continuity hypothesis. The idea here is that there's no real qualitative difference between the syntax that an adult and a child speaker of a language have. The kids may not have all the rules down yet, but they're still building trees in the same way that an adult is. But if that's true, why is what they produce so different? Well, there are a couple of possibilities. It could be that even if kids are working with the same grammar toolkits as adults, they haven't managed to fill in all the tools yet. They can skate, but they can't do all the jumps. This idea is known as weak continuity. Under this view, kids are missing some syntactic categories, like tense, determinators like the or and complementizers like that. And then, through more exposure, some cognitive maturation, or both, kids master those categories too, and happily add them to their trees. So kids at the two-word stage stick to nouns and verbs and adjectives because the rest of the grammar team doesn't actually exist in their mental playbooks just yet. Another possibility is they do have everything, the entire panoply of syntactic choices, but just can't use them all properly yet. This idea is known as strong continuity. In this view, kids build exactly the same kinds of trees as adults with all the same grammatical structures. It's just that they don't display it in their speech. All the different little meaning and syntax bits get caught up in a processing bottleneck because there's just too much to keep track of. So instead, what emerges is just the couple most important words that they want to express, even if all the syntax is pretty much intact underneath. This idea, where only the words that matter most make it out into the world, carries into the third phase of child speech as well, the telegraphic stage. This phase occurs from around 20 to 30 months of age or so like around 2 years old, and it's got longer, more complex sentences. But they don't sound quite natural yet. Instead, kids during this stage produce sentences like, "You'd love coach," or "What his name?" or "I good boy." So we can see more words showing up there, but they come out in a clipped style, like an old-timey telegraph, without a lot of functional grammatical markers. If we look at English, we don't see the past tense ed, the third-person agreement markers "so," determiners like "the" or auxiliaries like "will" or "may," and more. If it's not a regular nugget of concrete meaning, it's probably not going to make it out of the child's mouth during this stage. Because kids don't generally display those morphemes and the syntactic categories they go with in their telegraphic speech, it's been a big topic of research as to what's going on behind that. And here, there's a lot of evidence that kids do have the right syntax. They're just prioritizing their meaning over their function. For example, when kids do manage to use these more functional words, they use them right. They produce determiners in the right place. They might manage "the spring" or "the hot spring," but never "spring the" or "other spring" or "hot a spring." And they know you don't put determiners with pronouns, so no "the," "he." They've gotten that you only put "a" with singular nouns that you can count, so like "a tiger" or "a ring," but not with plurals or mass nouns, so you don't hear "a cats" or "a water. They understand that nouns go in noun places, like the subject or after the verb, and under what circumstances you can swap a noun or noun phrase for it or one. And that's all just in production. We almost never find kids making mistakes of commission where they say these functional bits in the wrong places. We just see them leaving them out. And that's probably so they can get out the stuff they really care about saying, those delightful nouns and verbs and adjectives. So again, we can see that kids look like they have the same kinds of syntactic structures as adults. They're just not good at processing the furious flow of speech bits, so they break down. We can see how this happens in how kids process language too. Let's look at a study with slightly older kids. In the initial experiment, kids were presented with an array of 6 colored balls, alternating red and green. And then they were asked to pick out the second green ball. That means that they should have chosen this one here, right? And yet a little over half the time, they picked this one, which is the second ball, but not the second green one. So that looked to the researcher like the kids didn't have hierarchical syntax. We know that green is closer to ball than second syntactically, so second applies to the whole green ball. But if there's no hierarchy, why not pick the green ball in the second position? It's just as legit a way to do it. But here's the thing. You have to be careful with kids, since the same processing limitations that work on their speech can mask their true abilities with interpretation as well. Another set of researchers performed the same experiment, except with one crucial difference. The kids didn't get to see the balls until they heard the whole sentence, rather than looking and listening at the same time. With only that one change, forcing the kids to wait for the whole context, the error rate dropped to only 14%. The earlier kids just rushed to judge the situation. If they'd only held back, they'd have gotten things much more right. That's the way kids are, though, rushing ahead and trying to work out all the linguistic gymnastics with only limited processing power. But no matter how many words they're using or what stage they're at, the seeds of a linguistic champion are already there. So we've reached the end of the LingSpace for this week. If you stuck the knowledge landing, you learned that children start off at the holophrastic stage, where one word is their whole sentence. That they then get to the 2-word stage and the telegraphic stage as they expand how many words that they can get out. And that at each stage we find evidence of continuity with how adults use syntax. The LingSpace is made by all these amazing people over here. If you want to learn more about how kids learn how to use negation, check back on our website. And while you're there, why not check out our store? We're also on Tumblr, Twitter, and Facebook, and if you want to keep expanding your own personal LingSpace, please subscribe. See you next time. Narakit tard.